Hello and welcome back in the Long Shot Podcast, here with a very, very special guest, a dear friend of mine, and of course now an NBA champion. Just puts him in a just a whole other echelon. Pat Connaughton, welcome to the Long Shot Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Appreciate you guys having me. I thought for a while there, it wasn't going to happen with all the back and forth we had, but you'd think with the amount of friendship Duncan and I have, and Dave, heard a lot about you, but I thought maybe this wasn't good enough content to make the Long Shot Pod.
I never would want you to think that. We talked about it briefly before we officially went on air, but I just want to clear my name publicly on a very public platform. We have millions of listeners worldwide.
Millions.
So basically what happened was we've reached out to Pat multiple times to get him on. Has been a very sought after guest from the very beginning. A couple of the times I will say, we flaked a little bit. We had other scheduling priorities, and that's not to say that you're second to them. It's just more so, you're a dear friend of the show. You're a dear friend of mine. We just felt like we could get you on at a more ideal time. And
look, I'm a businessman. I understand at the end of the day, somebody who's reliable, you can kind of fit them in where they get in, as opposed to sometimes you need the bigger names that will only have a certain ability to schedule at certain times.
It's
not bigger.
It's not bigger. That's the thing. It's not even about the names. It's just, some people are just more difficult to schedule with. With you, it's a simple FaceTime. All I got to do is pick up the phone, call you. I can get you on the pod. Like, I hit you up, 2 days ago, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I'm down. Let's do it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I get it. I thought for a while there, I was worried that maybe it was the fact that you and I get matched up a lot against each other, and maybe it was because we beat you in the playoffs after you beat us. I didn't know exactly what was happening, but I'm glad we finally made it happen, and it's an honor to be on the show.
It's great to have you here. You bring it up. A lot's transpired between the two of us, both on the court and off it. Since you bring it up, though, the Milwaukee Bucks going on to win a championship, I just want to ask, we're in the midst of the preseason right now. How does winning a championship just change the entire tone of preseason training camp? Or maybe it doesn't, but I have to imagine that it does.
Yeah, I'd say it does a little bit. I'd also say, as you and I experienced, last year was that consolidated season, right? So we started late. We had a ton of games in a short amount of time. Playoffs felt way more normal. You actually almost got more days off in playoffs than you did during the regular season. But we didn't end until, I think, July 20th, July 21st. And so I'd say training camp, because we won, has been a little different, but also based off of when the season ended and the lack of off season, getting this season back on track, has also kind of double teamed it to be a little bit different. And I think obviously everyone knows there's a certain amount of expectations that come in after you win a championship and trying to defend the title and the whole thing. But I think what we've done a good job of to date, and what coaches really, hammered home on us, and Giannis even, and Chris and Drew, is, there is a lot of room for improvement. We didn't have a smooth sailing playoff run. You know what I mean? Like, we got down in a lot of the series, and we had times where we did not look like a championship team. And so how do we learn from those mistakes, and how do we make sure that we're coming out better and we don't have, lackluster sense of urgency around us just because we were fortunate to win the 2021 NBA championship?
Yeah. I mean, I've said it a handful of times on this, but it is crazy to me. And it's not just the NBA. I think it's professional sports in general. But so much of it is a what have you done lately, or like league, right? In that you guys just won the championship. Now, like, the narrative quickly shifts to, are they good enough to repeat? Like, you get that short window where you really get to, like, bask in it, savor it, which, knowing you, I know you did. I know you did really get to bask in it.
We just got an even shorter one because the season was a little bit later.
Right, exactly. And I want to talk about some of the basking, but before we get to that, did you feel a and I know you guys have, like, a crazy mentality in that locker room, but was there, like, a collective relaxing breath of like, okay, we've had these championship expectations for, 3-4 years now, and we finally got over that hump?
Yeah, I'd say I would say it was almost more about being able to overcome adversity. So we were a quote unquote championship caliber team. My first year here was the first year we kind of reached that milestone, and we had the best record in the regular season, but we dropped a 2-0 series lead to Toronto in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I mean, look, that year, no one really expected us to be what we were. But the second year of that, then the second year, everyone expects us to be a championship contender. And we're on pace at that point to win, 70 games at one point before COVID hit. And then you go down to the bubble and, we get our butts kicked by you guys. And when we come back, all of a sudden everybody's on edge. And I kind of made the comment to a few people around the team, like, hey, this has only been a 2-year build. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not something that championships don't happen overnight. I would say the goal is to be there to compete for a championship as consistently as possible, to be one of those handful of teams that feel like they're good enough to potentially win a championship and compete for it at the end of the season throughout the playoffs. And I think we were in that position my first 2 years here. I think we were in that position last year, obviously. But to get over the hump, having gone through the adversity of outside expectations after the first 2 years, I think gave a breath of fresh air to a lot of the guys that management, coaches, Giannis, Chris, like guys that we knew we were good enough to do it, but it's different to actually do it. And within the locker room, we had the confidence, but I mean, the NBA, like you said, outside and critic, everything that plays a role in our game. And so to silence them for a year and to have done it going into this year, I think it was really important.
Yeah. I mean, you hear all the time, like, we got to learn how to handle adversity. We got to learn how to overcome setbacks, that sort of stuff. I think so much it's like thrown around as like kind of coach speak and cliche, but I mean, you guys really went through like dealing with pain, like what it's like to be up 2-0 against the Raptors and lose, and then to play against us, not just bring that because it was me, but to play against us in the bubble and have all these expectations that this is a year, and then get gentlemen swept in the bubble.
Whoa!
but seriously, all jokes aside, like going through that pain is what actually prepares you to wrestle with adversity, I would think. At least that's what I've taken away from the championship runs that I've been on. Yeah,
no, 100%. I think the funny thing about it is, in answering questions this year during the championship run, there were people, the same reporters who asked me questions the first year. And the first year, my answer was, you don't need experience because we didn't have experience. And at the end of the day, you need some experience. And experience is going through adversity. Experience is learning from your mistakes, learning from the things that went wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, when you win a game, do you feel like you have to watch film? Do you feel like a lot went wrong? Like, no, you won the game. Now, when you lose a game, you feel like, I mean, when we got gentlemen swept by you, we felt like we let the whole city down, right? Because of the expectations that were there. It really wasn't that bad. You know how many close games we had during that series? But we didn't win them. So how do you learn from those losses? Because a lot of times in the NBA, you don't learn from the wins. So in learning from that adversity, and I mean, look, you look at it through this year's playoff runs, we might have got our real sweep in on you guys in the first round. But, the second round, we were down 2-0 to Brooklyn, who was, I would say, vastly favored to be the NBA champions. The Eastern Conference Finals, we lost game 1 to Atlanta. Giannis goes down, and he's out the last 2 games against Atlanta. And then in the finals, we go down 2-0 to the Phoenix Suns, and they looked like they were rolling. So we didn't make it easy on ourselves, but overcoming that adversity to win a championship, I think, made it that much sweeter because of the adversity we faced my first 2 years here.
Was there I like that you snuck in the sweep.
I caught that. That didn't go unnoticed.
Sweep. I just sneak in the real one. I have a rope somewhere over here.
I know that was deserved. Is there's some added motivation in that series from you guys, right? Like, was there revenge on your mind when you get the Heat in the first round?
I think it's unique, right? Guys across the NBA, I mean, Duncan and I are really good friends, but like guys across the NBA, they know each other and they all have their own egos. They all have their own, like, what they feel is a better matchup versus what they feel isn't a better matchup, and who they want to get revenge on versus who they don't. And so I would say for us, was there a silver lining to playing the Heat in the first round and being in a position to knock them out after what had happened the year before? Absolutely. But I think what we talked about in the locker room was it would be short-sighted of us if we were just looking at this as like hey, let's get revenge on the Miami Heat. Like for us, and we talk about different mindsets, and I'm sure we'll get into that here in a little bit, but like we wanted to compete for a championship. We happened to get matched up with the Miami Heat. In order to compete for a championship, we had to go through the Miami Heat. It wasn't like behind the scenes we're like, let's lose this game so we can play the Miami Heat and try to get revenge on them. It was basically hey, if our goals are to be an NBA champion and to compete for a championship, it doesn't matter who's in front of us. We're going to have to take care of business.
That was a really strange dynamic if you take it back to those last regular season games, because you guys were jockeying for, I think it was the 2 and the 3. Yep. And then we were jockeying for in the 4-5 game or the 3-6 game. And It was this weird thing where we played you guys the second to last game of the regular season, which had seeding implications. And I remember us thinking like, well, there's no way they want to see us again. Like, are they going to rest this person? Are they going to rest that person? And it's just so, it's fascinating how an 82 game season, or I guess last year's case, 72, whatever it was, comes down to those final games of this is how it's going to play out. And, I remember, obviously hindsight's 2020, but like we would have been much better served playing in that 4-5 matchup. Either, I think it would have been the Knicks, who we had like swept during the regular season. And it's just so interesting how that all plays out. And of course we end up getting you guys, and you guys have this massive chip on your shoulder to play us again. And then that all, turned out the way it did.
I mean, and that's like, we talk about baseball sometimes. You got 162 regular season games, and all of a sudden it comes down to like one game, or there's a wild card where it's one game to win it all after going, or to go on to the playoffs after playing 162 games. It's incredible in pro sports. To Duncan's point, it was literally the second to last game. I remember talking after the game, you and I being like, why would we want to win because we play you guys, or why would you guys want to lose because I think Jimmy didn't play in order to play us? Like, I don't know. I don't think anybody really wanted to match up with each other. But at the end of the day, somebody had to win the game. Somebody had to lose the game. And it wasn't all on us. It wasn't like if we won, we got you. If you lost, you got us. There were still other games that had to be played where if like the Knicks lost or if the Hawks lost or whomever, like we still may not have matched up. So it's that weird dynamic of control what you can control, try to look ahead and be smart about who you want to play. But then at the same time, if you're smart about it, you might not get it the way you want it anyway. So it's weird.
Yeah, and actually, you very kindly hosted me for dinner the night before that game, I think, and we were sitting around your dinner table. It was really funny because like neither of us were trying to like, obviously we're friends, so like there's banter, but like neither of us were actually trying to give up any information, but we were both like sneakily trying to like get information from the other. So I was like, so, game tomorrow, like, are you guys going to play? Like, is Giannis going to play? Like, what's going to happen? And Pat's like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, we'll see. And like, what about Jimmy? Is Jimmy going to play? And I'm like, I don't know. Because I think Jimmy was, like, questionable at the time. I was like, I don't know. Like, we'll see. And I think both of us kind of knew what was actually going to happen. But even in that moment, like, neither of us wanted to concede any information.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, let's be real. Neither of us wanted to concede information because we're competitive, but also because neither of us are at the top of the totem pole on either of our teams. So I'm not trying to get in trouble for that.
Yeah, that, and also it's like those guys are going to make their own decisions around what they want to do, and the last thing they're going to do is consult me. Like
100%.
Jimmy says like I can't go tonight with an ankle. He's not like reaching out to Duncan like, hey, just letting you know, can't play tonight. You brought up the media and how you kind of dealt with questions throughout the various years. I want to talk a little bit about media narratives, because whether we like it or not, and I think in a lot of cases we maybe don't like it, but they do kind of shape the perspective of players, for better or worse. And I think Giannis is a really interesting example of it, because he dominates the NBA, back-to-back MVP. You guys just terrorize the regular season 2 years straight. He's putting up triple doubles, playing 27 minutes a game because you're just blowing everybody out. But there's still this narrative around him that he can't win, or he's not a winning player. He's not a championship player, which I think everybody who actually lines up against him doesn't actually believe that. But talking heads or whatever are like, oh, he can't get it done. He's not the best player on a championship team. He needs a better number two, all this stuff. And it's so interesting to me how, and of course, once he does it now and you guys win, everything now flips to all I've now heard is for example, Giannis and Kevin Durant are top two and nobody's even close. And it's I get it why you need to get the championship to earn, I guess, that next tier of respect. But for you, who's somebody who's internal, do you view him any differently, or do you view your team or how you guys have come together any differently now that you've gotten over that hump?
No, I mean, not at all, I would say. I think it's funny because media in general, and look, there's good and bad, right? At the end of the day, I know enough about the business of the NBA to understand that the media is needed. The media needs storylines. They need to feed the fans things. Fans want to be a part of it. And the media getting an inside track, or what they think is an inside track, is an important inside visual for fans to see. And I understand everything about that for the most part. But it's always unique, because I think you can tell a lot about, a team and a player specifically based off of if they're reacting to the outside media or not. And Giannis has never been reactive to that. Obviously, he wanted to have some respect on his name and be considered one of the best players in the world. He won 2 back-to-back MVPs. But at the end of the day, win an MVP, his goal was to win games. And I think that's what I've seen. And I've been fortunate. I was around Damian Lillard for 3 years, and I've been around Giannis for 3 years. They're both unique in the sense of they don't let the media dictate what they do or don't do, or the accolades that they're trying to achieve. They're trying to win basketball games, and they're trying to do it in the best way they know how. For Dame, it's a little bit more on scoring and shooting and trying to be the guy that the other team has to stop. For Giannis, it's a little bit of an all-around everything. He knows he's got to score, but he knows he's got to pass to make his teammates better. He knows he's got to defend multiple positions, and he does it at the highest of levels. And I would say after winning a championship, none of that's changed. He's still in the gym late at night shooting because he feels like he needs to work on shooting and become a better shooter. And I think his jump shots improved on the 3 years I've been here. It looks more fluid. It looks more smooth. He's been more confident shooting them. But I think the only thing that does change internally after you win it is a little bit more confidence. You know what I mean? And you can kind of feel that in the sense of we all believed we were good enough to win a championship, but believing you're good enough to win a championship and actually winning one are two really different things. And now that we've been fortunate to win one, I would say the confidence level of, okay, we've been there. What did we do wrong that we can improve on? Because we have to be better than we were last year in order to win it. You look at all the teams, you look at you guys, you look at the Lakers, you look at the Nets, all these teams have revamped. They have more star power. They have more firepower. They're better than they were last year. So it's not going to be good enough to just be as good as we were last year and expect to win. So how do you improve? But knowing, hey, we've been there before. We've dealt with the media. We've dealt with adversity in these situations. And, we've stuck together through it all. And that's kind of what's kind of held us together as a core group, I would say.
Yeah. You mentioned that ever since you've been in Milwaukee, you guys have been contenders. And the friend of you would say that that's not by accident. And, we've talked a little bit about your teammates. I want to put you on the spot here for a sec. We have a lot of younger players that are tuned into the podcast, are part of the long shot community, if you will.
Yeah.
You have a very unique basketball trajectory because you were you were the absolute guy in high school. And that's likely the case with most NBA players. You went on to Notre Dame. We'll talk about the baseball stuff later, but you went on to Notre Dame. You have an incredible individual career and from a winning standpoint, career at Notre Dame as well. And still you've kind of just like found your way to just always take that next step. And, I'm watching you compete in the NBA finals, and you had an unbelievable finals series, but the entire playoffs and really your entire career, when you've had a meaningful role, is I feel like what you bring to the table best and most is that you just impact winning in all the in-between areas. And it's not that, you're going to hit 10 threes, but you're going to hit the one that matters. You're going to get the rebound that matters. You're going to make the defensive rotation that matters. You're going to do all those little things. If you need to drive and spray and create on a possession or two, you're capable of doing that. And you just find this way to like win between the margins. Is that something that's just kind of always come to you? Because you were like that, the guy with the ball in your hands for a lot of your career also, or is it something of a skill that you kind of developed?
Well, first, I wish you were a GM, because if all GM saw me the same way you just explained, I'd be in a pretty good position. Not that I'm already. But I think, I learned it when I went from high school to college. Like if you look at in high school, I was definitely the guy with our old AU program, the Magic. I was definitely the guy. But I was never really seen as a standout basketball player because of baseball, right? So baseball was always what people thought I was going to end up going towards. And when I got to college, I would say Notre Dame was not known for playing freshmen, right? Like we've always been known for having an older team. Coach Bray loves to coach. And at that time we're in the Big East, right? And that was known as a physical, big, brutal season league. And so he liked playing those seasoned guys, those guys who were 20, 21, 22, sometimes 23 years old. And so when I got to Notre Dame early on, even from some of the guys within my team who didn't end up being very impactful with our team, but it was kind of an unwritten thing like, hey, you're going to probably sit out your first year and a half, 2 years, because Coach Bray doesn't do it that way. And I mean, you know me, I'm competitive, and basketball's always been kind of the thing I've been most passionate about, even though baseball I may have had a higher trajectory in. And so I wanted to find a way to get on the floor. And that's kind of all I figured out how to do my freshman year. I didn't start, but I played in every game, the first, 5-10 games. And then by the beginning of league play, I was a starter. And it was just finding ways to impact winning, like you said. And so from an early on, whether it was making a three, whether it was driving, I mean, we go through my Notre Dame career. I joke with Coach Bray about it when I go back to school. My freshman year, it was, when you're open, shoot the ball. My sophomore year, I started off shooting poorly. It was like, you shouldn't shoot the ball. You should drive and kick and play defense and do all the other stuff and use your athleticism. My junior year, it was, okay, do a little bit of both. And then finally my senior year, I was a stretch power forward. I was playing the small power forward position before that was even a thing. And so when you look at my trajectory to the NBA, I'm not going to be a power forward. Like that wasn't great for my individual success at the next level, but I wanted to find a way to impact winning. And I think when it all boils down for me specifically in my NBA career, impacting winning is what gets me on the floor, what gets me a role, what gets me to be 30 plus minutes a game in the NBA finals. And am I going to, like you said, make 10 threes? No, I'm not you. Am I going to make 10 threes if I get 10 open threes? Yeah, maybe. But that's not
I was going to say, don't do that. Don't do that. You're very capable of making 10 threes. I don't want to hear that.
For sure. But for me, it's about just trying to be a well-rounded basketball player that can help impact winning. And I think as I've gone throughout my NBA career, it took a little more time. My first 2 years in Portland, I barely played. My third year, I was the only guy on the team to play all 82 games and every game in the playoffs. And I think I was fortunate to find coaches, Coach Stotts, Coach Bud, who found ways to integrate me because they knew I would impact winning in some capacity. They didn't always know what it was going to be on a nightly basis, but they knew it was going to happen. And for me, that's kind of how I've made my mark in the NBA.
You not only are you capable of hitting 10 threes, like Duncan said, but you're also very capable of keeping him from hitting 10 threes. I think you're one of the best guys in the league at guarding him. I mean that. And I don't know if it's because there's a personal relationship. Maybe you know his game a little bit better. You know his tendencies. But I think you block his shot more than anybody else in the league. Do you have any tricks that you're willing to share?
No, I don't have
Don't
any
expose
tricks at
me.
all.
Don't expose me.
I was gonna say, I don't have any tricks at all, because for all those youngsters watching the pod, they might be competing against them someday. I don't want to give up my competitive advantage that makes me valuable, or his competitive advantage as a friend.
I appreciate that.
No, I think, look, for me, like kind of like Duncan said, I'm trying to find a way to impact winning, and it happens to be seen on Duncan more than others because we are friends, and because we have an AAU coach who loves to post stuff about him and I playing against each other. And, you obviously know we have a relationship and all that. So I would say the funny part about it is I do that to a lot of guys. I think a lot of guys, I learned guarding Dame and CJ my first few years in practice, like, you got to find ways to get over a screen, or you got to find ways to anticipate where your person, the guy you're guarding, KYP we call it, know your personnel. You got to find where they like to shoot. And so for me, it's just kind of about that anticipation. And fortunately and unfortunately, depending who you're talking to on this pod, me or Duncan, it's very difficult for me to block Duncan's shot if he's coming to his left shoulder, because he's got such a high release and he's 6'8" and I'm not. But if I can try to force him to come off the other way to the right shoulder, just like any right-handed shooter, like that, it's easier for me to get, and I don't always get a finger on it. I just try to make him feel uncomfortable when he's shooting, because he's one of those guys who, if he's got daylight and he has the look at the shot, he jumps high, he's got a high release, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. He's just going to make it or miss it. And so I just try to find ways to whomever I'm guarding, whether James Harden's a lefty. Well, he loves to take that step back right. Well, guess what? Have you seen him take many step backs left? Not really. When he goes left, it's all the way to the basket. And so for us, I know I got two trees back there in Giannis and Brooke. I'm not going to be the guy that's forcing him right. I'm going to try to force him left, which seems counterintuitive because he's a lefty, but he loves that step back right. So just knowing your personnel has always been part of my MO as a defender.
You do have great technique, but it's very clearly the extra motivation that inspires you to not let me get in the open looks when you're guarding me, and I won't hear anything else. You got into it a little bit right there, talking about kind of like different personnel, but I kind of, if you will, I'd love to hear you unpack defense a little more, because you've done it to me before, and you have a really interesting way of simplifying defense. And it's actually something like your words had helped me in terms of like, sometimes you get out there and you're guarding an NBA player and you just feel like hopeless in a way, because they're so talented. Like, guys at this level are so talented and they have such great ability. But for you helped me kind of boil it down to like, okay, simplify it down to like, this guy likes to do this, try to just take away this. And I think, and then watching you play and use that effectively, like, you're such a solid defender. Like, you're always utilizing angles, you're utilizing your strength, you're playing the offense into kind of like your world. If you can just talk a little bit more about that and how you kind of go into like prepping for defensive assignments.
Yeah, I would say, first and foremost, you're 100% right. Like, the NBA talent, I think sometimes is underrated. I mean, I know we're the best in the world and I know fans know that, but like, I think sometimes guys look at like a you who's pegged as a shooter. Well, against anybody aside from the NBA talent, you're much more than a shooter. And like, when you get coming off pin downs and you can curl, like, you can finish in the lane. You can finish over people. You can hit a mid-range.
I'll put something on somebody. I'm not you. I'm not you with 44-inch vertical, but every now and then I got the rim grazer package for sure.
100%. I have a notification alert for when Duncan Robinson dunks, and it goes off at least 5 times a month. But
5 times a year.
Yeah, probably more than 5 times a year category. We'll take it though.
For sure.
I would say for me, like, it's about knowing that guys are so talented, they have second, third, and fourth moves. But at the end of the day, I want to play to my strengths and to their weaknesses. So knowing both of those things, you mentioned strength. I know strength, especially at my size, is something that, no pun intended, is a strength of mine, right? So how do I make sure that when it comes to angles or when it comes to defending somebody, I find a way to have contact with them? So whether I'm defending Kyrie Irving or, Devin Booker in the NBA Finals, whatever it is, I want to make sure that they feel me and I'm having an impact on their lack of comfort driving the basketball, shooting the basketball, whatever it is, right? And then knowing what their strengths are, it's the basketball IQ side of the game for me. So knowing that Devin Booker or Chris Paul always try to find a way to get to an elbow and try to find a way to hit a mid-range jump shot, like force them into the trees. Know that the strengths of our team defense versus what their strengths are as a player. And so when it comes down to defending for me, I try to simplify it, to your point, to like 1 to 2 things. And it's what their strong hand is or what way they like to go best. I try to take that away. And then I try to know where they like to shoot from. So if it's you, I know they run you off 17 different screens in Miami before you're going to take a jump shot, but you're going to try to find a way to be behind the 3-point line. So, and somehow you have a way of getting extended from a screen that isn't a travel, that is 17 feet away from where the screen just happened. And so I know I'm going to have to take a few more steps before I gather and jump. If it's a Devin Booker, I know he loves to pump fake. So if I can stay connected with him when he's driving left, he's going to try to pump fake. And if I don't go for it, if I'm content with being solid and not trying to get a block, but trying to just make a shot difficult for him, if he makes a contested mid-range 2, I tip my hat to him, because at the end of the day, the way the NBA is going offensively, if it's not a 3 and it's not a layup, it's tough to survive on long-range 2-point jump shots. Now, I will say in the playoffs, a lot more mid-range shots are taken, but it's tough to win games off that on a consistent basis. So if I know that and I can simplify, hey, force him left, force him right, and know where he wants to shoot from, then I can do my job to the level that I need to do it. And, hopefully Coach Bud doesn't rip me out of the game for letting a guy go by me.
I love that breakdown. I also want to say what also makes you a really good defender is that you're an incredible athlete. And this is something I wanted to ask you about. But, when you were coming out in the combine, I think you had the highest vertical in your draft class, correct?
In my class, yeah.
Yeah, 44 inches, I believe, was the number. Yet somehow when I was watching that draft coverage, and I think still, when I watch you play or hear a commentator or whatever talk about you, or when I'm watching you participate in Saturday night dunk contest, still the word sneaky athletic is thrown around. Sneaky athletic.
Yeah.
Does that, when you hear that, do you just laugh at that, or is it disrespectful? Where does, or is it just trying to roll off your shoulder at this point, that it's still sneaky, that you have the highest vertical in your class and for some reason it's still sneaky?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's always going to put a chip on my shoulder at the end of the day, but, stereotypes are a thing. They're a thing in our profession, right? At the end of the day, I've heard, people in our games, commentators in our games on ESPN or TNT, if I get stuck in the lane and I turn the ball over, they say, oh, that's not his game. You should stay behind the 3-point line. And it's I'm not even known as just a straight up shooter. I can shoot the ball, but to your point, I'm known as being able to kind of do a bunch of different stuff. And so I think for me, it's just about, if I can take people by surprise with my athleticism, then that's an advantage for me. Because if people don't think I'm as athletic as I am, I'm going to have an advantage on going by them one direction. I'm going to have an advantage on defending them and trying to block their shot or stay with them as they're trying to drive. I think most of the guys within our league and coaches and management, and they all know that my athleticism is more than quote unquote expectations based off of the eye test. But I think that's just a testament to the fact that, common sense isn't always that common.
Speaking of you not just living behind the 3-point line, I watched, in preparation to talk to you tonight, I spent 30 minutes of my day today watching your dunk highlights from 2018. It was like a collection of your best dunks. I think half of them were backdoor cuts. You might be the best back cutter in the NBA. Where does that come from? Is that just a natural feel that you have? It's amazing. Honestly, seriously, it's a 30-minute video. I encourage people to go watch it. 15 minutes, are you getting backdoor dunks?
Look, I think it's to Duncan's point. How do I find ways to impact? And I think in the NBA, there's a lot of, especially in the regular season, there's a lot of defense that is played aggressively or not aggressively. But either of them, you can kind of take advantage from a back cut standpoint. You know, if it's aggressive, they're going for a steal. It's kind of a quick little move and you're good. If it's not aggressive, they're not always paying attention to you. Their head's watching the ball and you can kind of cut behind their head. And I think for me, as a guy that doesn't always have the ball in my hands, I mean, look, we got Giannis, we got Chris, we got Drew. We got to get out there that have the ball in their hands a lot. I got to find ways to score the basketball outside of just catch and shoot 3-pointers. And at the end of the day, that's just kind of the way it works. In the NBA, you have to be a threat to score the ball if you want to be on the floor. Very few guys in the NBA can stay on the floor without being able to score the basketball. I mean, you got a few defensive specialists, but at the end of the day, even them have had to learn how to shoot the ball or at least be a threat to shoot the ball in order to stay on the floor. And so for me, I needed that second dynamic in my first few years in Milwaukee to be a threat as opposed to just being behind the 3-point line.
Do you have a favorite in-game dunk as an NBA player? Because I watched a lot of them in that 30-minute video. There's some good ones.
I would say there's probably two favorite ones. One of them was in Golden State 2 years ago. I was on the left wing and I drove middle and I went off the right foot. It was kind of like a wrong one. I went off the right foot and I just threw it down with my right hand. And I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. And it was kind of fluid and it was off the dribble, it was off the bounce. It was something that, again, not many people thought I could do. And then I would say there was a putback one I had with my left hand that came off of a rebound. Shout out to Chris Middleton. I think he missed that shot for me on purpose. And it was one where like I got out pretty high and I caught it way back here. And it was pretty ferocious.
Was that Charlotte against Charlotte? Yeah, I remember that one. That was in that video.
Couple of things for you there. One, Pat, I want you to know that Davis has spent the last 72 hours in preparation for this interview, like he does every interview.
Yeah.
To the point where he's poured through every highlight tape, every article,
everyone.
Basically either any sort of media that's ever been published about you. Davis has seen in some capacity to the point where his eyes literally start to bleed. So shout out to Davis for that. Just high level preparation.
I've seen way too much of your face in the last 2 days, Pat. I'm sick of it already.
The second point is, Pat, you missed an incredible opportunity when Davis asked you about back cutting to shout out Middlesex Magic thumb down backdoor play that they used to run. Guaranteed dunk or layup depending on the personnel. But shout out to Coach Michael Crotty for the classic thumb down. It's a little drive middle, spin back. Looks like you're kind of running out of room, and then just a back cut. I can only imagine. We were different years, but I can only imagine you got a lot of mileage off that play. Yeah,
I mean, look, I think Coach Crotty instilled the alley-oop portion of that play during my junior year. So I think the backdoor play used to be because he had a lot of guys that could shoot on their team. And Crotty Sr. obviously needed something to switch it up because they were overplaying. When I got there, we decided to switch it from just a backdoor bounce pass to like throw it over the top.
I see what you had to do there. So you had to bring me down a level. For those of you who don't know the backstory, Pat and I grew up in the same area, played for the same AAU program, the legendary, I think it's legendary at this point, I would say.
Absolutely.
Middlesex Magic, founded by Mike Crotty Sr., now run by Mike Crotty Jr. Mike Crotty Jr., who is both a dear friend to the two of us. But yeah, what I'm now hearing is that version of the play that you ran is far different than the one that we ran, largely due to athletic capabilities.
I'm saying at the end of the day, 2 points were 2 points. We just had different ways of getting the 2 points.
Yeah, I like to tell people I'll start to dunk or I'll start to catch alley-oops when they start becoming worth 3. And for now, they're still worth 2. So, well, what's the point? It's just a loud 2, basically, is all it is. I want to talk high school, just time period, because I think we're now at the point where your high school career is somewhat lore in that it's just been so well documented. I mean, you're a Gatorade player of the year, dominant basketball player, but you kind of like came onto the scene late. But what didn't come onto the scene was the baseball talent, which was always there. Am I wrong in saying you were kind of clearly a more talented baseball player early on?
Yeah, I mean, look, the easiest way to kind of sum it up is my senior year of baseball, I had already committed to Notre Dame to play 2 sports. And as I went through my senior year of baseball, the New York Yankees offered me $2 million to get drafted in the second round, but I had to forego going to Notre Dame to play basketball. And so I think, I was an athlete. I wouldn't say I was like a pitcher, but I could throw really hard and I could make up for it with my athleticism. And from a baseball standpoint, I could hit 2 back then. So if I didn't play basketball, I probably would have gone to college to be a hitter and a pitcher. But baseball was definitely the thing. Like throughout high school, we played for the Magic AAU basketball wise, but AAU baseball wise, I was kind of a part of all of the, perfect game top 50 showcases. And I had teams that would just take me on the weekend to come down and play. Never had to go to practice. Played for a team out of Virginia one time, like just random things that were all the kind of higher level. What you would see now as EYBL and AAU hoops was like me in baseball. And so it was definitely what everyone always said. I remember I had a guy in the parking lot my senior year. I just thrown a no-hitter. He stopped me in the parking lot. Our athletic director was like, hey, I have to introduce you to this guy. His son plays for the Washington Nationals. They're playing at Fenway Park tonight against the Red Sox. I was like, oh, that's awesome. It's a dream of mine to play pro sports. And he said, yeah, Coach O'Leary's told me a little bit about you. That was our AD. And you're going to Notre Dame to play 2 sports. And I was like, yeah, I am. I'm really excited about it or whatever. And he goes, that's probably the worst idea you can have. And I was like, I was kind of taken back by it. And he was like, if you go to Notre Dame to play 2 sports, one of those sports is going to suffer. You'll never amount to be a pro in either of them. You should stick with baseball. What I saw today, like baseball, you could be a first round guy. You could be a guy that gets there really fast, accelerates through the majors. And I just vividly remember standing there for like 35 minutes. And like, us, like we're pretty nice individuals. So I wasn't going to tell the guy to like screw off. Like I was just like, yeah, oh yeah, no, that's a great point. Makes sense, whatever. And like 35 minutes of him just saying, yeah, you're an idiot for going to Notre Dame and play 2 sports.
Yeah, I mean, buddy, how about this? How about I play, 10 plus years in the NBA, then I go play baseball? How's that sound, pal? I've also watched you throw a football 75 yards. So I mean, you just got them all covered. But I want to ask about that decision as an 18-year-old kid to have $2 million on the table and say, actually, I'm good on that. I'm gonna go play basketball and baseball for free.
So the way I looked at it, my dad helped me out a lot with it as far as thinking through it. But the way I kind of looked at it was, if they were willing to offer me that now, if that's what they thought my baseball potential was right then if I continue to progress, it would be more later on. And I think for me, I saw my ability to progress as a 2-sport athlete was best suited on like the same campus. Like how hard would it have been if I tried to play basketball at Notre Dame and then go down to spring training in the spring and play baseball for the Yankees minor league system, or, getting an education was important to me, going to Notre Dame, playing college basketball was something I'd always dreamed about. So if I knew I wanted to play college basketball from a baseball standpoint, I thought my progression would be done a lot better if it was on campus where, I vividly remember my freshman year, we played Marquette at Notre Dame on CBS on one of those Saturday showcase games at like 2:00 in the afternoon. It was the first game I scored 20 plus points. It was against like, Jay Crowder, Vander Blue, DJO, all those guys. And at 7 p.m. that night, I was throwing a bullpen in the indoor facility on campus at Notre Dame. And just being able to do that, like being able to literally do both sports in the same day. And it really helped me as a baseball and a basketball player from a progression standpoint.
So you're a psychopath is my takeaway from
mine
that story.
too.
Yeah. At what point do you feel justified in that decision? Like, was there ever any doubt? I mean, being 17, 18 years old and having $2 million on the table, I get it. And your explanation is beautiful as to why you choose Notre Dame. Do you immediately feel justified when you show up on that campus and you're like, wow, this is amazing, I made the right decision? Or are there times where you're like, hey, it'd be nice to have, $2 million in my bank account, and I do like baseball a lot?
Yeah, no, I think honestly, I was so busy based off the story I just told you, I never got time to think about it at Notre Dame, especially when you include academics. But I will say, as my college career progressed and I went and played in the Cape Cod League, but Duncan knows we had summer school with basketball, right? So I only played in the Cape Cod League for like 3 or 4 weeks. And I played really well in the 3 or 4 weeks, but the coach was kind of pissed that I left after 3 or 4 weeks. And then like my junior year, I told all the teams, the MLB teams, like, hey, I'm going to go back for my senior year of basketball. I'd still love to be drafted, but I'm going to go back. And so I was a projected first-round guy in baseball after my junior year of college based off what I did in Cape Cod League and based off of kind of the raw talent I had. But I dropped to be a 4th-round draft pick. And I would say that's when it starts to think a little bit, right? Because I go from a potential of making $2 million after my senior year of high school to making $400,000 being a 4th-round draft pick. That's a $1.6 million hit. But I was fortunate to be drafted into the NBA. I was fortunate, to get to where I am today. But I would say definitely, when you don't play your first year in the NBA, when I barely played my second year in the NBA, you start to think like, am I going to make it? Was baseball the right choice? Did I make a mistake? But you can't really allow yourself to think that, because at the end of the day, my dream being a kid was to be drafted into professional sports. And I didn't want to give up on the opportunity of basketball coming out of high school just for, baseball.
I noticed you said the dream was to be drafted. Is there still some hope to play both? And not that we need to have any spoilers out here, but I mean, I remember a couple summers ago you were still throwing bullpens. Is it something that you still have on your mind?
Yeah, I think it would be cool. I mean, I think it's one of those things where right now, I think there's still improvement I can have within my NBA career. When you look at it, I'm going into my 7th year as an NBA player. It's only the 7th year I've had of focusing solely on basketball. And the things that I'm doing athletically, not to throw any shade at, baseball players. There are a lot of athletic baseball players out there, but I think as a pitcher, I might be as athletic, if not more athletic than the majority of, MLB pitchers. So as long as, my arm stays in shape and I'm keeping it loose on the side, I think maybe, you get 10, 12, 13 years in the NBA, it wouldn't be terrible to go, pick up the rosin bag and loosen up the arm for the Milwaukee Brewers and kind of get a revenge tour on that first pitch that I had.
I love that answer. I think it would be cool, Pat. It would be pretty cool if we got a presenting sponsor for our podcast, which we still don't have, by the way. So shameless plug for that. I think playing 2 professional sports falls into an entirely different category of something that would be cool. I appreciate the approach, though. I mean, selfishly, I would love to see it, and maybe somewhat partially, I think you could do it. Granted, I don't really have a whole lot of major league intel as to what it takes to cut at that level, but I certainly would never count you out. That's for sure.
I appreciate the support, and you promise you're not just saying that so that I stop trailing you on pin downs and trying to block your shot.
No, I mean that straight from the heart. Speaking of from the heart, this is a beautiful transition here. I want to talk a little bit about some of your off-court endeavors. One thing I've always admired about you is that you have not taken your opportunity as being a professional basketball player for granted in any way. And I've always admired how you've really used your platform to not only impact others, but also connect with other people and leverage your position to advance maybe your interests or learn about new things or expand your platform in other ways. Can you just talk a little bit about kind of how the different areas in which you've done that? I know you have a foundation. I know you're really passionate about, some of your real estate stuff you're doing off the court as well. And then also some of the stuff you've maybe done in the Players Association. I know you're involved in that as well. So, whatever you want to take on and tackle, I'll just let you run.
Yeah, I think, for me, I always said I was fortunate to become a pro athlete. I'd use my platform to kind of give back to the people and places that helped get me there, and for that next generation of youth athlete. So I'd say from a foundation standpoint, that's kind of where my heart lies for it. It's, hey, sports have done a lot for me. I wouldn't have had the chance to become an MLB player out of high school if it wasn't for sport. I wouldn't have a chance to have gotten a Notre Dame education if it wasn't for sport. I wouldn't have a chance to sit in front of and meet a lot of the great people that we get to meet within the NBA if it wasn't for sport. And so I've all seen the things sports have done for my friends who haven't become a professional athlete, the translatable life skills, the hard work, the teamwork, the leadership, the things that translate to the business world or to the philanthropic world or to the doctoral world, whatever it might be. And so I think for me, kind of giving back to that next generation of youth sports and doing it, via different camps and clinics, doing it via different, court refurbishments, doing it via different mentoring and scholarship opportunities. I would say it's something that I've tried to grow since kind of like my second year in the NBA, and try to continue to give back through my foundation and support that next generation of youth athlete, because I think youth sports are becoming quite a big business. And I would say, look, I run a real estate development business. When you're running a business, the goal is to continue to grow the business. And I think from a youth sports standpoint, the kids' best interest should probably be up top. The growing of a business shouldn't trump some kid's dream or aspiration, because it should be about that kid. It should be about the youth within the sport, not the business of youth sports. And so that's kind of a narrative that I'm trying to rewrite a little bit with my foundation. And then, my dad was a general contractor. So I grew up working on his job sites, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, hauling lumber, cleaning dumpsters, carrying sheetrock up the stairs, stuff that wasn't glamorous and quite frankly wasn't fun. But, it taught me hard work. It taught me some things, and it showed me on a firsthand basis, the projects he got hired to redevelop or renovate. It showed me the difference between when he got hired and what they looked like when they were done. And so when I got drafted into baseball after my junior year of college, I didn't know how long pro sports were going to last. Obviously, you hope they last forever, but I was a 4th round draft pick in baseball, and then fast forward to my senior year of college, I was a 2nd round draft pick in the NBA. So I wanted to invest my money via the stuff I learned at Notre Dame into something I had a education in, some passion for, things that I grew up around. And so I flipped a home with my dad, and I kind of saw the financial side of it and how it worked on the back end and on the business side. And I continued to kind of just grow in that range and learn from a bunch of different mentors that I've been fortunate to have, and that I've met via my platform. And, I've learned, flipping houses was great for me, but at the end of the day, we're fortunate to have a stream of income, right? We have a day job, quote unquote, a day job that compensates us very well to do what we love to do. So how can I plan for the future? How can I grow a portfolio, a real estate portfolio that will generate cash flow for hopefully generations to come? And as I continued to, grow that, there was just organic interest amongst teammates within, my team back in Portland and my team here in Milwaukee. And so I just wanted to start to create something where, I can bring on other professional athletes. I can bring on, some of the mentors that I've had in the business world, and I can take on investors and show them how it works, how it operates, give them a stream of income when their careers are done, because I do think the business of pro sports is unique. We make all of the money that we're expected to live off of in the first 5 to 15 years of your professional careers, if you're lucky to play for 15 years. And then that has to last you for the next 45, 50 years, 60 years, if we're, God willing. And so for me, having an education and having some experience in the real estate development world and using some of the competitive advantages that I have, can I bring on professional athletes so that they have a stream of income when their careers are done, so that there aren't those 30 for 30s out there that talk about how all pro athletes go broke. And can I continue to grow a viable way for athletes to invest with me, alongside me, in my real estate development company, so that, they're making a great amount of money even when their careers are done.
Sounds like pretty sound logic. Pretty impressive breakdown there.
Yeah, look, Davis, I didn't go to Michigan like some of us on this pod, but at the end of the day, Notre Dame treated me well, and its alumni have been great in mentoring me along the business path.
We would never throw shade at.
It's okay you didn't go to Michigan, man. There's people need to be in second place too. Notre Dame's great.
Jeez.
Just kidding. That's actually a joke. I actually want to get out in front of that because I actually dislike the Michigan elitist kind of mentality that naturally all Michigan people carry. I have a ton of respect for the University of Notre Dame and all universities, honestly, and small colleges. I attended one of those as well. But yeah, I'm off the Michigan elitist stuff. That was just a timely joke. Anyways, Dave, what do you got?
I wanted to ask about the youth sport because I think you're spot on. And I think since we've all graduated high school, it's ramped up so much more where it's become a business like you've talked about. What I've also seen is that there's this increased pressure to push kids into one sport. It's like everything's become year round. Baseball's year round, basketball's year round. For like these 10-year-old kids, it's like if you want to play on these elite programs, you got to be there all year round. You are like the poster child. I think we need to make you the poster child of why dual sport athlete is really important. And in the NFL, they've started to talk about this too, right? Like Patrick Mahomes was played everything in high school. Kyler Murray, baseball player. Like I think there's so much value in being just an athlete. And you've talked about that a little bit in this conversation, but just being an athlete. Is there stuff that you consciously can lean on from baseball, from being a pitcher, that helps you as a basketball player?
Yeah, 100%. And I would say, look, before I even get into that, what you're talking about is exactly the reason, or one of the main reasons I started a foundation to have our own programming, do our own, youth sports stuff, is because any specialization pitch to a kid, I would argue that's younger than 15, 16 years old, you can make the argument, hey, if you play something 24/7, you're going to get better at it. Pardon my language, but no shit. Obviously, you're going to get better at something played at 24/7. But at that young of an age, it is not healthy for a kid to be specializing and using the same body part before it's fully developed on a 24/7 basis. And what I think is the youth sports conglomerates and businesses and programs that are pitching that message, they're hiding behind that idea that, hey, you'll get better if you do this 24/7, 365. But what they're really seeing is, hey, if you want to be on this elite baseball team in the spring, you have to play with us in the summer. You have to play with us in the fall. You have to play with us in the winter if you want to make it, because we know we can make more money in the summer, this fall, and the spring. And now it is a year-round thing that they're, making money there. It's a monetary benefit. So I think it's a monetary bias. I don't think the kid's best interest is at the top. Hey, how to grow my youth sports business? Well, okay, I understand you're trying to grow a business, but you're trying to grow the business at the expense of what's best for this next generation of athletes. And I think, to your point, and to expand on what you said, I played football in high school. Like, I wanted to be a quarterback back in the day. And, I played baseball obviously up until, 7 years ago. And I think the things that I learned from each of those sports have translated to my basketball career. The toughness that I learned that I needed in football when, me and Duncan were in friggin' 25-degree weather on Thanksgiving, and I had to try to figure out a way to throw a damn football 45 yards down the field while I'm getting hit hit by 9 kids from, Brockton, Massachusetts, or, coming from a baseball standpoint, when I walk the first 3 batters of an inning and it's the bottom of the 7th inning in high school and we're only up 1 run and I got no outs with 3 guys on, how the hell am I going to mentally get out of that jam when it's just me on the mound? So I would say the toughness I learned in football, the mental toughness that I learned in baseball, because it is a sport that if you fail 7 out of 10 times as a batter, you're a Hall of Famer. You got to learn to deal with failure in baseball, and that can be mentally grueling. So I think for me, and it goes far beyond just those 2 things, but the things that I learned from other sports, the athleticism, hand-eye coordination, the overall generic health of using different muscle groups at different times of the year. I think it's a big reason why I am where I am today.
I absolutely love that answer. I'm not quite the spokesperson for cross training like you are, because I don't have the accolades. But I will say I'm a huge proponent for cross training as well, and just playing everything. I also want to point out, Pat, I think the reason Davis asked that question is, I don't know if you knew this, but Davis is at a little bit of a different point in his life than you and I. He just got married. I think that was more of a research-based question.
Yeah.
I think he's thinking about having some kids here soon, some Davis Juniors running around, and really wants to figure out the best trajectory for his potential offspring. So I think that's where that question came from. But I got to say, you absolutely crushed it for an answer.
Hey, if Davis Jr., Davis Sr., and little Princess Davis, if you have a girl, want to come and play and be a part of my foundation programs, they are more than welcome.
I'm in. Consider it done.
People helping people. It's what the long shot's all about.
Powerful stuff.
Pat, we have taken way too much of your time. You got a big preseason bout against the Jazz. I think I recognize that hotel. Is that the
Yeah.
Is that the Utah hotel? Yep.
Grand American.
Looks better. Grand American. Beautiful. We've taken way too much of your time. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. You're coming on again at some point. I just want to let you know that.
In person.
We've involuntarily signed you up for a repeat appearance on the long shot in person. Just letting you know.
Yeah, look, maybe we can do an in-person one at, a court we refurbished via my foundation, or a job site that we're developing via my real estate company. I mean, look, I don't want to be the guy to shamelessly plug some of the things that I'm doing, but since it's TBD on when you guys actually let me come back on, since it was kind of, in and out there at the beginning of letting me come on the first time, I'm just going to throw that in so the viewers know the next time I'm on, if it's not at one of those 2 places, it's on you.
Fair enough.
Wow.
We shoulder that responsibility proudly. All right, Pat. Thank you for joining us. And actually, I'll see you in a week here when we play you guys.
Hey, we will, and I'll be trying to D you up. You'll be trying to make some shots, and maybe it'll be a nice little episode for the long shot pod.
You're saying I don't D anybody up? I don't try on defense? Is that what that was? Was that some shade thrown at me on my defensive presence?
Hey, all I'm saying is, my job to defensively guard you is all I know that's going to take place. I don't know what your defensive assignment is. As you said earlier, Jimmy doesn't call you and tell you who you're defending right away.
Fair enough. I'll let that one slide. All right. Have a fantastic evening. I'll talk to you soon.